Rebuild self-confidence after retirement, life after 60 motivation. Hello all my old friends. Have you ever sat quietly one afternoon, looking at the sunlight through the window, listening to the birds outside, and suddenly felt yourself sinking down? Not because of tiredness, nor because of sadness, but a feeling of indecision, unknown name, as if you were standing in the middle of a great silence in life. Maybe you have been a busy person for decades. Every morning when you wake up you know exactly what you need to do, where to go, who to meet. Then one day, the alarm clock still rings, but you no longer have a reason to get up quickly. You sit there, in your own home, feeling like you are lost in the midst of very familiar things. Do you find it strange that when you have gone through so many ups and downs, overcome so many difficulties in life, there are times when you find yourself becoming uncertain? Not believing in your own abilities as much as before? I do. And I know many of us have felt or are feeling that way. We are used to being useful, being the decision maker, being the one to take on the burden. And then when that role gradually fades over the years, we suddenly wonder, do I still have any value? Can I still do anything meaningful? Retirement, a word that sounds gentle, but can be a big turning point with many questions. No longer having a job to define yourself, no longer having people who need you every day, what do you have left? At this age, self-confidence suddenly becomes a precious thing, and sometimes we are confused about where to start again. But if we sit together, take a deep breath, and look deeper inside, we will see that confidence has not disappeared. It is just sleeping somewhere in our hearts, waiting for a warm touch to wake up. And in today's journey, I want to find those touches with you. Together we will explore 7 simple but profound ways to rebuild self-confidence after retirement. Not dogmatic lessons, not even imposed formulas, but gentle, intimate reminders like a conversation between old friends sipping a cup of warm tea on the porch. So, let's get started. And I want to start from the smallest thing, but it is an important first step, which is to look back on the journey you have gone through. It sounds simple, but think about it. When was the last time you sat down and really looked back on your life? Not to complain or regret, but to acknowledge fairly and respectfully. Once, I sat and talked with an old friend in the state of Oregon. She had been an elementary school teacher for more than 30 years. When she retired, she fell into a mild depression. I felt invisible, she said. No one wanted me anymore. But then, one day, she was invited to attend the graduation ceremony of a former student. The student stood on the stage to receive his doctorate and said something that almost made her cry. I am who I am today, largely because of you, the first person who taught me that I could do anything. From that day on, she began to record memories, letters from her students, souvenir photos, and she realized that she was not only a teacher, but also someone who touched the lives of many children. You see, we are often too busy to remember how wonderful we used to be. When we retire, it is an opportunity to look back not with regret, but with pride. Maybe you were a dedicated employee, a mother or father who was always there when your children needed you, a kind neighbor, or simply someone who kept the fire burning in your kitchen every day. Those things may be small in someone's eyes, but to those who have received them, they are a whole world. Looking back like that helps me see clearly that my value is not in what I am doing, but in the whole life I have lived. And that is a solid foundation for confidence to move forward. From that look back, we will gradually see one thing: we still have a lot to give. From there, we will take another step on the journey to regain confidence, that is, learning how to step into a new role. When we were young, we were often labeled by our profession. People introduce us as engineers, doctors, accountants, teachers, etc. But when that label is removed, we have the opportunity to become, ourselves, a person with emotions, with intelligence, with a heart and time to write a new chapter. A friend of mine in Michigan, after retiring from the banking industry, started learning to draw. He used to think he had no talent for art. But one day, while taking his grandchild to a children's art class, he sat down to try drawing for fun, and he fell in love. Since then, he has spent 2 hours drawing every day. Now, he organizes free drawing classes for seniors in his community. He said, "I have never felt more alive than I do now." I no longer chase after achievements, I draw for joy. And thanks to that, I feel worthy again. You see, self-confidence does not come from how good you are, but from daring to step into something new, daring to let yourself try, make mistakes, and then grow from there. Even though we have gone through 60-something springs, that does not mean we have finished our role in life. Sometimes, the most interesting role comes later. And there is something equally important, knowing how to choose the things we come into contact with every day. Self-confidence cannot grow if every day we only come into contact with things that make us doubt, feel discouraged, or compare ourselves. Have you ever noticed that when you open social networks, everywhere are images of people living happily, successfully, and healthily? But I see myself as average. Don't let those images define your worth. Because no one posts online when they cry, when they are tired, or when they don't know where to go. We only see the surface of others, but compared to our own depth, that is always unfair. Instead, create a space for yourself to nurture your confidence, read books that warm your heart, listen to songs that make your heart flutter, talk to people who make you feel valuable. Confidence does not come naturally, it needs to be watered every day with small but sincere things. And sometimes, what you need most to rekindle your confidence is someone who believes in you first. If you are feeling discouraged, try calling an old friend, someone who once understood you. Ask them, back then, what kind of person did you think I was? Sometimes, it is the story of others that is the mirror for you to see the light in yourself again. You see, the journey to regain confidence is not an arduous journey, but small, warm, and humane steps. Looking back on the past journey, stepping into a new role, selecting what you come into contact with every day, those three things are like wooden bridges across the river of doubt in your heart, bringing you step by step back to yourself, a version that doesn't need to be perfect, just needs to be honest and full of confidence. And if you are still wondering, can I do it? Remember, you have done so many great things. So rebuilding confidence sometimes is just adding a new leaf to your already strong branch. Now, when those first three steps have begun to lift the layers of dust covering your confidence, let's continue to discover the next things that can help us live more fully in this stage of life. The interesting thing is, the longer we live, the more we realize that maturity never stops. It doesn't end at 18, nor does it stop when we retire. Maturity, or rather, self-understanding, continues, quietly, sometimes slowly, but very real, at any age. And when it comes to rebuilding trust in ourselves, the next important thing we need, after we have learned to look back and begin to step into a new role, is to learn to forgive ourselves. Sounds strange, right? Forgiving ourselves, it seems like it is only for young people, those who stumble and have a long way to go. But in fact, at this age, we need it more than ever. Because the older we get, the more memories we carry with us, things we have done, things we have not had time to do, and especially, things we have not done right. I once met an old man living in Minnesota, now in his 70s, who still holds a regret in his heart that in the past, because he was too busy working, he missed many important moments with his son. Even though the two of them still talk regularly, he said, I can't stop thinking about the parent-teacher conferences I didn't attend, the times my child was sad and I didn't have time to ask. And it was those memories that made him feel unworthy of his children's love. Does it sound familiar? We tend to hold on to past mistakes like pebbles in our pockets, seemingly small, but the more we think about them, the heavier they become. Forgiving yourself doesn't mean forgetting, but understanding that you are also human. You have made mistakes, but you have always done your best in the circumstances you were in at that time. When you forgive yourself, you are also opening the door for gentleness to enter. And that gentleness is the solid foundation for trust to be restored. A psychologist at Stanford University once said, we often treat ourselves in a way we would never dare to treat others. Think about it. If an old friend told you about their regrets in life, would you blame them? Or would you hug them and say, you did your best? Now, live in the moment. So why not say that to yourself? And when we feel lighter, when the pebbles of regret are put down, we can see the path ahead more clearly. From there, we can move on to a very important part of this journey, actively creating things that make us proud every day, no matter how small. Have you noticed that in the past, when we were still working, we often had specific measures to know what we had done that day? A contract was signed successfully, an order was processed, a child learned a new lesson. But when we retire, those measures disappear, and we easily fall into the feeling of not doing anything. So why don't we create new measures, small things, but enough to make us feel that we are living meaningfully? For example, today you called an old friend to ask how he was, cooked a delicious meal for yourself, wrote a few lines in your diary, or simply stepped outside for a 10-minute walk in the sun. Each of these small things is living proof that you are still doing good things for yourself and for others. And when you accumulate those moments every day, self-confidence doesn't need to be sought far away, it comes from what is happening in the present. You see, to nurture trust, sometimes you don't need to do something big, you just need to be patient enough to recognize and appreciate what you are living. And when you have done that, when you see yourself living and not just existing, you will naturally feel worthy of trust from others and from yourself. I remember an old man in California once said, "The day I stopped seeing life as a stage where I no longer had a role was the day I started living as an audience enjoying my own play." That sentence made me think forever. Because in fact, rebuilding trust is also learning to stand on your side, cheer for yourself, instead of just sitting there waiting for others to give you recognition. Another thing is that we need to learn to reconnect with others sincerely. Because no one can rebuild trust in themselves in loneliness. I know many of us, after retirement, gradually lose social connections. We see friends less, old colleagues are less in touch, children and grandchildren are busy with their own lives. From being a busy person, always having someone calling our name, we gradually fall into a quiet void. And that silence, if prolonged, can become a feeling of being forgotten. But you know, the wonderful thing is that we can proactively create new connections, no need to wait for someone to call, no need to be useful anymore, just be yourself and be willing to open up. I once met an old woman living in rural North Texas. After her husband passed away, she lived alone for 5 years. At first, she withdrew, not wanting anyone to visit. But then one day, she was invited by chance to a meeting at the local library where people read books and chat together once a week. She reluctantly went, just to kill time. But that day, a boy of about 10 years old was reading aloud with a lisp, and she smiled and offered to teach him pronunciation after that session. From then on, she became his best friend, and slowly reconnected with the reading group. She said, "I didn't think I could still be needed. But it turns out, the only thing holding me back was myself." That story made me realize that, to regain trust, sometimes you just need to dare to step out of the house again, dare to talk to strangers, dare to smile before they can take their eyes off you. Relationships, whether new or old, are mirrors that reflect our values. Every time someone listens to us, shares with us, asks us, is also every time we are reminded that we still matter. And when we are brave enough to open up to connect, to proactively seek out spaces that make us feel seen, then trust will no longer be a distant thing. It will come, softly and clearly, like the morning light filtering through the curtains, not loud, but enough to warm a room. You see, rebuilding trust is not a steep climb. It is a journey of small steps, of daily choices, forgiving yourself, creating something you are proud of, and reconnecting with the life around you with sincere threads. And now that we have gone through some very important parts of this journey together, I would like to invite you to continue, to listen to a few more things that, when we pay attention to, will soften our hearts, and our trust will grow like a sprout in the gentle spring. There are afternoons when you sit alone by the window and you ask yourself, have I lived correctly? Can I still start something new? Does anyone really need me? Those questions are not a sign of weakness, you know. They are signs that your heart is still alive, still yearning to trust, to connect, to be yourself. And if we have learned to forgive ourselves, to appreciate the small values each day, to dare to open our hearts to reconnect with others, then there is one last thing, but it is the most solid foundation to help us regain our trust, that is to dare to relearn how to live according to what we truly believe in. It sounds simple, but you and I both know that living true to ourselves at the age of 60, 70 is not as easy as people think. Because for decades, we have been used to living for the roles, as parents, grandparents, employees, pillars. Those roles gave us a reason to wake up, to try. But then, when those roles gradually fade or disappear, we struggle. We don't know clearly what we really want, what we used to dream of, or what we just do according to other people's expectations. I once talked to an elderly man in Georgia, a former high school teacher. After retiring, he felt so empty that he started working part-time at a supermarket, not because he needed money, but just to feel that he was still needed. One day, while resting in the logistics room, he overheard two young people talking about writing stories. And the amazing thing was, he had loved writing since he was young. He used to have a notebook full of poems, but he had folded it up when he got married. That day, he went home, rummaged through an old trunk and found that notebook. From that day on, every night he spent 30 minutes writing, not for praise or to be read, just to live true to a part of himself. When he told me that, his eyes sparkled, not because he had become a writer, but because he felt he was living authentically. I no longer felt invisible, he said. I was doing what I loved, without having to explain myself to anyone. That's the point. When we live by values we truly believe in, whether it's writing, gardening, caring for others, learning to draw, learning to meditate, reading, or just being kind every day, our confidence comes back to us naturally. Because then, we no longer need the world to validate our values. We know who we are. There was a Harvard University study that lasted more than 75 years, following the lives of hundreds of people from their youth to old age. The results showed that what makes people happiest and healthiest in life is not money or fame, but being true to themselves and having sincere relationships. When people are themselves, they become strong and confident, regardless of age. So if there is something you have forgotten, a small dream, an old favorite, something you once wanted to try, maybe now is the time to go back and allow yourself to live it fully. Not to prove anything, not to make anyone proud, but to let your heart bloom again. I know, there will be times when you will doubt, is it too late? But think about it, if there is an apple tree planted later than the others in the garden, when the season comes, its fruit will still be as sweet as the others, right? The timing is not as important as whether you are willing to sow again. And when you have started living your own way, you will be surprised to see trust return in the eyes of others. Not because you have become extraordinary, but because you are inspiring. Here's an interesting thing. When an older person lives authentically, lives joyfully, lives passionately, they not only revive themselves, but also become a source of light for those around them. Children and grandchildren will look at you with new eyes. Friends will find you more valuable. And you will stop doubting yourself. I once saw an old lady in Oregon, over 80 years old, who went to the park every week to teach people how to knit. At first, only a few people stopped by to watch, then a group came regularly. No one paid her. But she said, I have never felt so important. Because she was giving what she loved and living true to her values. So, if you feel like you have lost faith in yourself after retirement, please don't try to run after something big. Turn inward and ask, what do I really believe in? Then from there, live that thing, even the smallest thing. Maybe it's waking up 15 minutes earlier every morning to sit quietly and breathe. It could be calling an old friend to reconnect. It could be writing down some thoughts from yesterday. Or simply choosing to eat healthier, because you believe your body deserves to be cared for. Each of these small actions, when done with honesty and patience, is like a brick building a bridge that leads you back to yourself. And when you stand firmly on that bridge, you will no longer feel shaken by words, looks, or the gap of age. And then, you'll find that you never really lost faith. It was just temporarily buried under layers of busyness, sacrifice, responsibility, and expectation. But now, you're slowly peeling back those layers. You're coming back. You're living. I really hope that, after what we've been through together in this video, from learning to reflect, to forgive, to create value every day, to reconnecting with others, to living what you truly believe in, you'll feel like you're not alone on this journey. You may not change the world, but you can change the way you walk in it. And that is enough to make your life worth living every day. If you've ever had a day where you felt lost, let today be the day you turn back, gently, but firmly. You can start over at any time, because your value is not in your age, but in the light within you, which never goes out, just sometimes gets a little obscured. If you find this video helpful, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. I would love to hear your experiences, stories, or concerns, because who knows, what you share might be a source of encouragement for someone out there. And if you want to continue to accompany me on journeys like this, where old age is not the end, but the beginning of new maturity, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. There are many wonderful things waiting for us to discover together. Thank you for listening, for sympathizing, for patiently accompanying me throughout this journey. I wish you a happy, healthy life, living true to yourself at any age. And remember, self-belief is not something someone gives you, it's a gift you can give yourself whenever you're ready. Goodbye and see you in the next video.